Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be uncorking the mysteries of Bordeaux wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether you're, thinking about a trip or maybe just want to impress some of your wine snob friends, or hey, even if you just love learning, this episode's for you. We've got excerpts from this pretty extensive Bordeaux guide, some maps, even some really evocative descriptions of the region itself. And by the end, you'll not only get the basics of Bordeaux, but you'll have some surprising facts and stories too. Enough to make you sound like a true connoisseur.
Sounds like a delightful journey indeed.
I'm curious, when we say Bordeaux is so special for wine, what is it about the geography that makes it stand out?
Well, one of the most fascinating things is the role of the Garonne River. It's not just a pretty feature on the landscape, it's like nature's climate control for the vineyards.
Oh, got
The
that.
Garonne and the Gironde estuary it forms with the Dordogne River, they actually moderate the temperatures, keeps things from getting too extreme for the grapes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And the guide also mentioned the river system, adds humidity to the air, which obviously the grapes love.
Exactly. And over centuries, this interplay of the rivers and the ocean influence creates almost perfect conditions for these very specific grape varietals. It's a prime example of how, terroir, that sense of place, is just essential to understanding wine.
Yeah, so even before we get into the specifics of the wines, we're already getting a sense of why Bordeaux is so special, this whole intricate dance between water and land. But I am ready to dive deeper into terroir, though. I think a lot of people hear that word and they kind of nod along, but maybe they don't really get what it means.
Yeah, it's more than just a fancy word. Terroir really encompasses the entire environment where the grapes are grown. The soil, the climate, the topography, even the human traditions, all woven into cultivating the vines. It's almost like, think of it like a person's personality, shaped by their environment and experience.
That's a great analogy. And our Bordeaux guide gets pretty specific about this too, breaking it down by the left bank and the right bank of the Gironde estuary. So it's more than just geography, right? It's like two distinct wine personalities.
Absolutely. The left bank, known for its gravelly soil, is Cabernet Sauvignon territory. And gravel is fantastic for drainage. It lets the vines dig deep for water, and it even absorbs heat during the day and releases it slowly at night, all contributing to those bold, structured, age-worthy Cabernet characteristics that we love.
That's fascinating. The guide mentioned the right bank being more clay heavy. So does that mean the wines are totally different?
Yes. Merlot thrives in the clay soil, creating wines that are often softer, more fruit-forward, and maybe a bit more approachable in their youth. It's like, the difference between a powerful, brooding hero and a charming, elegant friend.
I like that.
Which style are you more drawn to?
Ooh, that's a tough one. They both sound pretty tempting to me. And the guide also mentioned the Entre-deux-Mers area, which literally means between two seas because of the rivers. And it produces some great white wine. So that adds another layer to this whole terroir concept. Okay, so we've got the geography, the terroir, but what about the human element, right? Bordeaux has been a big deal for centuries.
Yes, history is practically woven into every bottle. You can't talk about Bordeaux without going back to the Romans, who, they really recognized the potential of the region's climate and soil way back when. And then centuries later, a royal wedding really put Bordeaux on the map. When Eleanor of Aquitaine married Henry II, who became King of England,
Wow.
Bordeaux wines suddenly became the drink of the English court.
That's so interesting. The guide even mentioned the English had their own name for it, claret. And that wasn't just a quirky term, right?
Right. It shows just how deeply intertwined English culture and Bordeaux wine became, influencing its prestige even to this day.
So history has clearly shaped Bordeaux. But what about the regions themselves? Let's explore what makes each one unique.
Well, let's start with the Medoc, often called the King of Cabernet for a reason. It's a peninsula north of Bordeaux City and home to many of those famous classified chateaux we were talking about earlier.
Ah, okay, so this is where those legendary names come from.
Yeah.
Like Lafitte Rothschild, Latour, Mouton Rothschild.
Exactly. Each chateau, along with these, smaller appellations within the Medoc, they all kind of add their own unique nuances to that powerful Cabernet Sauvignon character.
So if you were creating a Bordeaux cheat sheet for our listeners, what would you write under Medoc?
I'd say Cabernet Sauvignon Central, home to wine royalty. And be prepared to age your wine for a long time.
Perfect. Now, the guide also mentioned this region called Graves, south of the city. What's interesting about that area?
The Graves region is fascinating because it produces both powerful red wines and some of Bordeaux's most delicious dry whites.
Oh, wow, okay.
And that's thanks to the diverse soil there. It's a mix of gravel, clay, and limestone, so it can handle both Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot for the reds, as well as Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon for the whites.
So it's a region for both red and white wine lovers. Anything else that really stands out about Graves?
Yes. Within Graves, there's this sub-region called Pessac-Léognan. That's where some of the most sought-after white Bordeaux wines come from.
Okay, so we've got the bold reds at the Médoc, the two-sided personality of Graves. What's next on our Bordeaux adventure?
Let's hop over to the right bank now, to Saint-Emilion. Imagine rolling hills, vineyards as far as the eye can see, and this medieval village straight out of a fairy tale.
It sounds magical. So what kind of wines can we expect from Saint-Emilion?
Saint-Emilion is known for mostly Merlot-based wines, which are often softer and more approachable than those left bank Cabernets. Yeah.
Okay.
They have these beautiful aromas of red fruits like plum and black cherry, and they often develop these really interesting earthy notes as they age.
So maybe like a bit more fruit forward and less intense than the Médoc wines.
Precisely. Think of them as like the elegant, approachable cousin of the Médoc wines.
I love that. And you mentioned earlier that Saint-Emilion also has its own classification system. How does that differ from the Médoc's 1855 classification?
Well, both systems aim to rank quality, of course,
Mhm.
but the Saint-Emilion classification is a bit more dynamic. It's been revised several times, which, adds another layer of intrigue for those who really like to delve into the complexities of wine rankings.
Yeah, it sounds like there's always something new to discover in the world of Bordeaux wine. Now, just north of Saint-Emilion, the guide mentioned another right bank region, Pomerol. What makes that one special?
Pomerol is a fascinating case. It's tiny but mighty. It's known for producing some of the most exceptional Merlot wines in the entire world.
Really?
Yeah, these wines often have this velvety texture and this incredible concentration of flavor.
What stands out to you about Pomerol compared to the other regions we've discussed?
Well, what's really interesting is that Pomerol has no official classification system, which makes it even more mysterious and exclusive. Wines from Pomerol are often, highly sought after, with prices to match. It's a region where reputation and word of mouth truly matter.
It sounds like a hidden gem for true wine enthusiasts. Now, before we move on to the experience of actually visiting Bordeaux, we have to talk about one more region, Sauternes.
Oh, yeah. Sauternes, a sweet wine haven of Bordeaux. This is where the magic of noble rot comes into play.
Okay, yeah, the guide mentioned noble rot. And honestly, I was a bit grossed out at first, but also intrigued. Can you explain what it is and why it's so important for Sauternes?
I understand it does sound a little unpleasant, but noble rot is actually a type of fungus called Botrytis cinerea. And in the right conditions, this fungus affects the grapes in a very specific way. It concentrates the sugars and flavors.
So it's not like rotting the grapes in a bad way.
Exactly. Instead, it creates these incredibly rich, honeyed, almost nectar-like sweet wines that are truly unique to Sauternes.
And the guide mentioned these wines can age for decades, becoming even more complex over time. It's definitely a different side of Bordeaux, but sounds worth exploring.
Oh, I completely agree. It really showcases the diversity and complexity that makes Bordeaux so special. Each region has its own distinct character, its own story to tell, and of course, its own delicious wines.
Speaking of stories, the guide wasn't just about the wine itself. It also touched on, the joys of eno-tourism. Should we uncork that part of the conversation now?
Absolutely. Let's shift gears from the bottle to the Bordeaux experience itself.
Okay, so let's say our listener is ready to book that flight to Bordeaux, experience it firsthand. When would you recommend they go?
Well, Bordeaux is beautiful year-round, but each season offers, a slightly different experience. Spring and fall are ideal for those picture-perfect vineyard landscapes. With mild weather and fewer crowds, spring is particularly stunning, with everything in bloom.
Oh, that sounds lovely. But I imagine summer in Bordeaux has its own charm too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Summer in Bordeaux is all about the buzz. Festivals, open-air markets, just a vibrant energy in the air. Just be prepared for bigger crowds, potentially higher prices if you prefer a slower pace, a more cozy atmosphere. Winter in Bordeaux can be quite charming. Think evenings by the fireplace, hearty regional cuisine, and you might even find some, off-season deals.
Okay, so we've got options for every season. What about getting around once you're there?
Renting a car is ideal for flexibility, especially if you want to explore at your own pace. Venture off the beaten path a bit, but Bordeaux also has a decent train system, and there are even bike paths if you want a more leisurely approach.
Now, you mentioned earlier that some chateaux actually offer accommodations.
Hmm.
What would you say to someone who's considering that kind of like once-in-a-lifetime experience?
Imagine waking up surrounded by vineyards, having breakfast in a historic dining hall. It's truly an incredible way to immerse yourself in the history and beauty of Bordeaux.
I can see why that would be on so many bucket lists. Okay, so let's say our listener is standing in a wine shop in Bordeaux. Which bottles should they be looking for? I know we touched on the like legendary names earlier, but could you give us a quick rundown?
Of course. So Lafitte Rothschild is often described as elegant, refined, aromas of black currant, cedar, sometimes even a hint of violet. It's a wine that can age for decades, becoming even more complex over time.
Amazing. What about Latour? What should someone expect if they're, lucky enough to try a bottle?
Latour is known for its power and density. Imagine dark fruit, tobacco, leather, all wrapped up in a structure that practically dares you to age it for 50 years or more. It's really an unforgettable experience.
Wow. And finally, Mouton Rothschild. What sets it apart?
Mouton is opulent and bold with a richness of flavor that's almost decadent. And of course, there are those famous artist-designed labels, which add another layer of intrigue to these already sought-after wines.
Now, those first growths sound incredible, but are there other, like, noteworthy producers our listeners should be aware of?
Absolutely. Bordeaux has this, complex system of classifications, ranking wines based on quality and prestige. You have the second growths, third growths, and so on, down to the Crus Bourgeois and regional appellations. And within each appellation, you'll find a whole spectrum of styles and price points.
So there's something for everyone, from the legendary to the hidden gems. The guide also highlighted family-run wineries, which I think is important to mention.
Yeah, you're right. Bordeaux isn't just about the grand estates. Countless smaller family-owned wineries produce exceptional wines with a lot of heart and soul. One example is Château de Fusal, which has been around since the 1700s and is still family-owned today.
It's a reminder that there's a whole world of Bordeaux wine to discover, beyond just the iconic names. Now, no trip to Bordeaux would be complete without experiencing the local cuisine. What are some must-try dishes our listeners should add to their itinerary?
Oh, well, the classic entrecote à la bordelaise is a must. Think perfectly grilled steak with a rich sauce made with Bourdeaux wine, bone marrow shallots.
Oh my gosh, that sounds incredible. What kind of Bordeaux would you pair with that?
You'd want a red with enough structure to stand up to the richness of the beef and the intensity of that sauce. A Cabernet Sauvignon dominant blend from the Médoc or a well-aged Saint-Emilion would be excellent choices.
Okay, and now for something sweet. The guide mentioned cannelé, those little custard cakes with the caramelized crust. What's the story behind those?
Cannelés are a Bordeaux institution. They have that wonderfully caramelized crust and a soft, custardy interior, flavored with vanilla and rum. They're the perfect bite-sized treat, especially paired with the sweetness of a sauterne.
Okay, so we've got steak, we've got sweet treats. What else?
Don't miss out on the fresh oysters, which pair beautifully with the crisp, dry white Bordeaux. And you can't forget about the regional cheeses. From creamy camembert to tangy Roquefort, there's truly something for every palate in Bordeaux.
Wow, I think we've officially covered it all. The geography, the history, the key regions, the wines, the food, even some travel tips. You are now armed with all the knowledge you need to not only appreciate Bordeaux wine, but also to plan an unforgettable trip to this incredible region.
I think our listener is ready to become a Bordeaux expert.
Before we wrap up, I have one final thought. The guide mentioned that the city of Bordeaux itself is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which I think is worth highlighting.
It's a testament to the city's rich history, architectural beauty, cultural significance. It's a reminder that Bordeaux is more than just wine. It's a destination that offers, a glimpse into the heart of French culture.
So if you're looking for your next adventure, consider adding Bordeaux to your list. And in the meantime, why not open a bottle of Bordeaux wine and share your newfound knowledge with friends?
Cheers to that. The world of wine is a journey of constant discovery. There's always something new to learn, something new to taste, and something new to experience. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep those glasses filled.
Until next time, happy sipping.